limits. So I now call Timothy Gaston.
Much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, this morning I had the privilege of hosting the European Victims' Day event in the Senate chamber. We heard a testimony from Pamela Wilson, whose father was an RUC officer murdered by the IRA on his son's 8th birthday. He also left behind a 10-year-old daughter and an 8-month-old baby girl. We also heard from Colette Murray, whose brother Cyril was shot dead by loyalist terrorists on the 8th of July 1992. I was honoured to introduce Caroline Death, whose father Gerald was murdered by the UVF working on a building site of a new Christian Brothers school in 1975. I was also privileged to meet David McCaughey, whose cousin Douglas McCaughey was one of the 3 off-duty Scottish soldiers lured from a city centre bar in Belfast and driven to a remote location and shot. I was glad to see colleagues from the Alliance Party in attendance this morning, and I asked them, in light of what they heard, to reflect on a simple question: is it right, is it moral to draw a distinction between paramilitaries before and after the Belfast Agreement? Surely on reflection you will agree with me that while there isn't any justification for the existence of terrorist groups which inflicted so much suffering on all sections of our society today, there also wasn't any need for them 25, 35 or even 45 years ago. The Alliance Party, in their motion, should have went further. In failing to do so, it plays into the disgraceful no alternative narrative from some in this House. When my party leader addressed the issue of a scoping exercise in the Commons, he characterised it as appointing a nursemaid for paramilitaries. I agree with his assessment. It is quite clear that the end point of such a process is the description or de-prescription of terror groups proposed in the Independent Monitoring Commission report. Such a move would result in a sickening spectacle of wicked murder gangs being able to openly glorify and celebrate their deprived exploits. That is somewhere none of us should want to go. But while agreeing with the assessment of the Alliance Party insofar as it goes, I have to point out the irony of them bringing a motion like this before the House while serving in an executive alongside Sinn Féin, the party of no alternative. Does anyone remember why the Independent Monitoring Commission exists? It was formed in 2015 after a paramilitary assessment by the government in the aftermath of the Provisional IRA murder of Kevin McGuigan, which stated that the Provisional IRA retained an Army Council, which members believed oversaw both the Provisional IRA and Sinn Féin with an overarching strategy, retained departments with specific responsibilities, and still had weapons which had not been decommissioned. If you believe that paramilitaries have no place in Northern Ireland, what are you doing in a coalition with a party overseen by the so-called Army Council of the most murderous terrorist group in Western Europe? Whether you like it or not, this chamber and these institutions operate under what Shane O'Casey would describe as the shadow of a gunman. Going back to where I started, I would observe that in one of the testimonies we heard this morning, who was from Colette Murray, as I said, her brother was murdered by the UVF. Unlike many victims, Colette saw men stand trial for that murder. 2 individuals were later convicted and sentenced, but as a result of the immoral Belfast Agreement, these individuals only served a minimum of 4 years and a maximum of 8 years for their heinous crimes. If you use the Belfast Agreement as the yardstick whereby things should be judged, then you're only ever going to go further down the moral sewer when it comes to paramilitaries. Whilst I have concerns where the motion has come from, I will be voting for the original motion and certainly not for any of the amendments.